Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer and I'm sounding a little bit more like myself in this review. And this review is the 2003 high-grade GM Cold District type. Now this review is brought to you by those fine folks over at Canadian Gundam. Canadian Gundam is your one-stop shop for all things plamo and Gunpla here in North America. With a vast catalog that's restocked regularly, a private warehouse option, and flat rate shipping to the US and Canada, they're going to have you covered for just about anything you need. When you're checking out that vast catalog, don't forget to use the promo code Gunpla Network to save yourself 10% off. Now, of course, knowing this was from 2003, I had an idea of what this was going to be like, but I'm actually relatively pleased. This is much like, in the weirdest way possible, the high-grade Leo that came out, the more recent one, in that it's simple, but it does what it needs to effectively. Now, it's not going to give you all kinds of crazy articulation, but the articulation you have is generally serviceable. Some of the seam lines and nubs are a bit of a problem, but old kit, you're kind of expecting this. But they do a fairly good job of hiding some of it, not all of it by any means, and you'll see through the review. But overall, I'm pretty pleased. Now, visually speaking, this is a very simple design. There's not a lot that they would have needed to have done in plastic to get this to be accurate. Now, they actually did a really good job, especially for 2003. Most of it is white, gray, black, and a little bit of red here, and for the most part, the vast majority of it is in plastic. You do have some red metallic stickers up there in the vents. You do have some of those red metallic stickers up there on the face. And then you have the yellow stickers on the jewel, the shoulders, and two more red metallic stickers down under the waist. But that's it. I mean, for something like this, I kind of expected a little bit more in terms of either not putting any kind of coloration in or just kind of making a bunch of stuff stickers. But I'm really pleased. The chest is well done. The gray, the dark gray, kind of the dark gray black that shows through for the vents. The red is well done. The head sculpt is nice, and with a little bit of love, could look really cool as well. And yeah, I mean, it's effective. It's simple. It is what it is. It's not necessarily something crazy to write home about, but it does what it needs to do. Now, in terms of its overall kind of, I'd say, problems, because oddly enough, most of them don't come in terms of the articulation. Most of it's serviceable. It is some of the nub placement and some of the gapping. Now, as we see here, most of this is up on the top. So, like I said, they kind of did a decent job of hiding it if you're not looking at it from above. But I had a lot of difficulty on both sides of the chest and the back. On the tops of the shoulders, there's some nub marking there. That's not great. That's very noticeable. I'm sure I could have probably done a better job of cleaning it and it wouldn't have been a problem. But this was by far the most obvious portion that it stuck out to me. In terms of gapping, though, you of course have the fairly normal seam in the head. If that's a big bother for you, fairly easy to correct. You have the same kind of going down into the chest, but that feels a little bit more like a panel line. And you do have some of that vibe of this as a panel line on the little earmuff piece, but yeah, this is standard high grade. If you've built one before and seam lines bother you, you know what you're getting into. And yeah, outside of that, those are really the two major standout weird visual things. Now, in terms of its kind of armored up look here, if we pop the beam saber in, it looks good. It's looking more like a GM. Just a cold weather GM, I guess. I don't know why gray equals cold weather, but sure. I like this design. I actually think this is one of the cooler color combinations, as bland as it is. Really wish we'd have saw more of the Cold District type GM. But yeah, it looks good. The beam saber hilt just goes in the backpack as you'd expect. But of course, once you get it with the shield and the gun, it looks a little bit more unique. Now, the shield is pretty standard traditional GM shield fare. You do get a sticker for it as well, but it is the same red metallic that the vents on the head and the thrusters on the shoulder are. So it doesn't blend very well. someone in the unboxing video for this in the comments had mentioned just finding a water slide from a different kit and putting it on there, and it looks fine. You could also just not put one on there if that bothers you, but that is red metallic, so it is going to stand out. The gun, as cool as this is, and this is one of the big selling features for me personally for the GM Colt type, is it's got a unique rifle, unique machine gun. And it is probably one of the absolute worst weapons I've had the displeasure of messing with in one of these high grades. It does not fit in the hand very well. The little like buttstock portion doesn't like help at all. It just, you can kind of leverage it a little bit, but it does make the actual holding position of the rifle a little weird. You can bring the other arm across in some poses to help, but it just doesn't work very well. This is something that another one of the comments in the unboxing had said we need a revive of this, and I don't disagree by any means after having built it. But yeah, it's just this gun, which is the cool, like, unique factor for this GM outside of its coloration, does not work very well. Now, if you do decide to get into some posing with it, you're not going to leave it in a static pose. You can do some stuff, right? It does have some usable posability. So you have a decent amount of range in the legs and knees. It's a simple kit, so it's going to give you some of those benefits of not having a lot going on. The arms, of course, are a little bit more limited, but not terribly so. You can bring the shield forward, you can kind of throw the gun back, and as long as you're careful and try to use friction in the right ways, it won't fall out of the hand. And yeah, I mean, it works pretty well. The balance of this is pretty good. It's a fairly light kit, obviously, because it's very simple. It's a kit, it's hollow, it's old, it doesn't have an inner frame. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't have a lot of problems in terms of getting posability. Now, this is one, obviously a lot of GMs are going to be this way, that are more geared towards ground poses. This one in particular, obviously. And yeah, I mean, you can do a lot on the ground. I actually didn't even mess with putting this on a stand because you don't really ever see it flying a lot in the very short bit of 0080 it's in. So yeah, you can use other effect parts on the ground to kind of sell that dynamic action, kind of like a stomping pose here. Then if you want to ditch the shield and have him just kind of using the gun, you can do that. And like I said, you can bring that arm across with the open hand to kind of help hold it a little bit, but it doesn't go all the way. You can bend it a little bit further, but it makes the arm look a little awkward to me. And with the holding hand, you have some difficulty in getting the arm across to hold the magazine that's sticking out of the side. So you have some issues here and there. You can get it to look serviceable, but it's also, the biggest letdown, I would say. Like, it doesn't ruin the kit for me, but it is one of those things that this has a unique weapon, and the weapon just doesn't work super well for a lot of different reasons. But you can get it in a serviceable pose if you want. Now, if you want to have him in a shooting pose, like I said, you can bring the arm around a little bit to help get a grip on that magazine. And yeah, it works okay. It's not great by any means, but it is serviceable. If it's on a shelf and it's not, obviously this is not going to be the mainstay of your shelf, the big centerpiece. So you can probably get away with it. And as long as no one like really focuses in on it, they won't notice that it's a little awkward. But once again, this is a weapon that could have had a lot of potential. They took the time to make the detachable magazine, which is really cool. It's a neat feature. I'm glad they did that. But they just didn't give this GM the appropriate stuff to hold it right. Like, if you're going to go as far as having a detachable magazine, maybe do something with that buttstock to where you can kind of slide it in and out or something, or at least just give them like the kind of bent down trigger hand or something. Now, like I said, it's serviceable and you can work, but you do have to do that work for it. And it just doesn't look quite right most of the time for me personally. Now, if you want to have a reloading pose with the help of one of those building sets here, This actually looks pretty good. This is one of the more serviceable poses I feel like I've had this particular weapon in. The detachable magazine is a cool feature. I'm surprised they added it for 2003, especially when we have kits now that don't have this feature most of the time. So it's really neat that they did this back then. It would have been cool to have like a spare one or something that could have been stored on here, but 2003, simple GM that shows up for maybe less than a few minutes in the beginning of 0080. But it's still really nice. I do enjoy this pose, and it does work well with that building set. And then if you want to really dig into what the GM Cold District type ends up doing, here it is. It's fallen down, it's getting beat up. The building set once again helps a little bit here. If you want to pose around, take some pictures. I've also got the clip out here, but it does have limited posability, so getting it down into like a damaged, knocked over pose is a little more difficult, and you're not going to do that most of the time, but it is something that with the help of peripherals, different effect sets, you can pull off. And it does look pretty good. For whatever reason, the GM is designed to look really good on the ground. And then, if you so choose, you can use the toothpick beam saber that comes in here. Yes, this is old enough to have the solid white single molded piece beam saber hand and beam saber blade. So it is white. You're going to have to go back and paint that, as well as paint the hand kind of like a black-gray type situation. But it's not too bad. Now, in terms of comparing it to some of the other GMs I have in my collection, which is not many, oddly enough, as someone that enjoys GMs, design-wise, we have the GM Custom and the GM Quell, and you can kind of see that lineage there. And yeah, I mean, they look good. So if you have a lot of GMs, this is just something that adds an extra little splash of color. It's a little different, a little standout-ish. And you can get it in some decent static poses with that machine gun. And this is actually, I think, the pose I'm going to leave it in on my shelf, to be honest, because it's the only one where I don't feel like the machine gun looks awkward. But you can absolutely have this with a bunch of other GMs, regardless of when they came out, and it's not going to look super weird. So overall, it's pretty nice. I enjoy this kit. Now, in terms of recommendations, who do I recommend this for? Well, if you're a big Federation guy, or you like kind of the GM grunt suit type things, this is a fun little build. It's not something that's going to challenge you. It's not something that is all that unique. Even with its color scheme and weapon, it's not overly unique, I guess is the best way to put it. It's just another GM to add to the collection. So if you're a big GM guy, Federation guy, grunt suit guy, now if you're a big Xeon guy, I would still recommend getting this because, it's fairly easy to put together. And, if you want to just have some Xeon suits destroying this guy, you can do that too. So, yeah, I would say you probably wouldn't want this to be your first kit. Not necessarily because it's bad, but there are a lot of better alternatives that have come out that are a little bit more readily available and are a little bit cooler looking if you're just getting started. But if you've built a couple, I think this is a good one to jump into just to see what a 20-year-old high grade feels like and have a fairly unique looking GM on your shelf. Anyway, I've been the Spicer here for the Gunpla Network. As always, friends, do your best to stay safe and keep on building.